And we're back. Hello everyone. I'm honoured to introduce you to this round of the ESU public speaking competition. My name is Mia and I will be the chair for this round, which I'm super excited about because I've always secretly thought of it as like being a game show host. And so in light of that, I would like to introduce you to our first contestant, Masa, who will be talking to us today about whether physical appearance should play a role in a person's self-esteem. She's chosen this topic as she personally relates to this problem as a teenage girl who is constantly surrounded by the peer pressure of how we should look a certain way. On to our questioner, Rosie Reed, a Year 11 from Torquay Girls Grammar School, who will help us truly understand this topic with insightful questions. Masa, before I allow you to begin your speech, which I'm sure we're all desperate to hear, I would like to remind you of some of the rules. Points mean prizes, but also that you have 5 minutes for your speech, and I'll knock on the table when you have 30 seconds remaining. May the odds be ever in your favour, and good luck.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? The iconic words of Snow White's vain villainess, whose obsession with beauty drove her to murder. The fairy tale was published around 200 years ago, but humans have cared about appearance for much longer. By 6000 BC, ancient Egyptians were already adorning themselves with makeup. Fast forward to the 21st century, and little has changed, including our love of eyeliner. Although I hope none of you have ever poisoned an apple, we as a society place importance on how we look, to the point that it's tied to how much we value and respect ourselves, our self-esteem. In government surveys, 90% of the UK agreed that appearance matters, and 1/3 said your value as a person depends on how you look. But is this right? Should physical appearance play a role in our self-esteem? This is the part where I tell you beauty is only skin deep. It's what's on the inside that counts. So original, right? Perhaps these cliches are true, but they dismiss the issue far too easily. Meanwhile, simply saying everyone is beautiful in their own way, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is at best patronising. At worst, it perpetuates an obsession with attractiveness by trying to convince us that no, we are beautiful. Do we really have to be? Instead, let's look at the numbers. 4 in 5 people say their body image negatively impacts their mental health, with 1/3 feeling ashamed or depressed because of it. This can become extreme. Around 2% of adults have body dysmorphic disorder, which causes them to obsessively worry about their appearance. And of these, 1 in 50 attempt to take their own life. Body dissatisfaction also jeopardizes our physical health, with many people following dangerously restrictive diets and back-breaking exercise regimes. Some take even more drastic measures, from destructive skin lightening treatments to radical cosmetic surgery. Meanwhile, 1/8 of 17 to 19-year-olds have an eating disorder, with a further 60% at risk of developing one. How can we justify an attitude that destroys our health, our well-being, and our lives? But even putting aside the most disastrous impacts, linking self-esteem to physical appearance is just wrong. Absurd, actually. Research shows that we tend to perceive more attractive people as more moral, but also proves empirically that there is no actual link between appearance and morality. So, if you're kind and selfless and accepting, why should your weight make you feel worse about yourself? If you're enthusiastic and motivated and resilient, why should your skin make you respect yourself less? If you follow your dreams, achieve success, and help people along the way, why should what you see in the mirror make you feel worthless? Of course, just as it can tear us down, our appearance can also build us up. Think of the joy brought by a new haircut or your favourite outfit. Looking a certain way can also allow us to express ourselves and escape the cage of beauty standards, whether that means an alternative style or traditional cultural attire? And what about the pride of watching your body become healthier as you take care of it? Joy, self-expression, pride, these are not the same as self-esteem. Food brings us joy, art is a means of self-expression. Getting 8 hours of sleep certainly makes me proud, but none of that is tied to our self-esteem. The same should go for appearance. In fact, we should take care of ourselves, express ourselves, and wear what makes us happy, not in order to feel valuable, but because we recognize our intrinsic value. When we evaluate ourselves based on our appearance, we turn ourselves into objects to be approved or rejected. But we are not objects, we're people. And regardless of what we see in that mirror, mirror on the wall, each and every one of us deserves to feel worthy, simply because we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Masa, for that brilliantly articulate speech. Honestly, if your views were popularized throughout the world, I'd definitely save money on makeup. Moving on to the Q&A portion of this round. Rosie, you have 4 minutes for your questions, and Masa, please keep your answers concise. I invite you to stand.
First of all, Masa, I just really like to thank you, and I think we can all like to thank you for such a relatable, current, and honestly, well-researched speech. And I can certainly really resonated with me with my new haircut, don't know if you noticed. Now, you mentioned right at the beginning of your speech, actually, our obsession with beauty. Do you think that this belief and obsession we have can be selfish when there are much bigger, more prevalent problems in the world for us to focus on?
On the one hand, I can see how you would think that. This sort of self-obsession does seem, well, self-centered. But at the same time, it's something that's inextricably linked with our psyche because of the external pressures that we're under. So although it is self-centered, it's something that we can't help unless, of course, we make a conscious effort to change what we are taught during our most formative years.
So would you say then it's human nature almost?
Well, on one hand, it is very widespread, and as I mentioned in my speech, it's an attitude that we've held for a very long time. But psychological research shows that it isn't something that we're born with or something that we have to develop. It's something that develops because of our family and our friends, the attitudes that they hold, and the attitudes shown to us by the media that we consume. And this is why cultures have different beauty standards and some have none at all. And so, of course, it's something that's within our control and something that we're therefore responsible for changing.
Thank you. Yeah, I really agree with that. But I'm actually really curious as to what you would say to those people who would say sometimes laziness and stagnant, not worrying about not how you look, but how your body needs to be, can sometimes lead to overweight and health problems such as diabetes type 2.
Well, the truth is, we often tend to think of it this way. We think that if somebody doesn't look a certain way, if they don't look polished and presentable, then they aren't taking care of themselves. But the truth is that taking care of ourselves shouldn't be linked to our appearance, just as our appearance shouldn't reflect how ready we are for something, how lazy or active we are. And obesity, as you mentioned, is something that's quite linked to mental health issues, to stress, and something that it's more of an issue for the National Health Service to deal with, rather than something that we should blame ourselves for, because that's really just not productive.
So then, in light of that, should we promote more wellness in mental health so these problems can be prevented even?
That's an excellent point, and you're right that we need to place more emphasis on well-being and mental health, especially in relation to our appearance. And I think that one thing we need to focus on is reducing the backlog in NHS appointments for mental health, which is quite staggering at the moment, preventing people from getting the help they need.
And how do you propose, and do you think that it's ever possible that we could create a society where no one ever has a diminishing self-worth in themselves?
It's often said that this sort of thing is naive, right? We like to think that we can change the world, but people often tell us that that's just too big of a goal. But the truth is that by changing our attitudes and by helping other people to change their attitudes, even if it's just by complimenting people, by helping people to look at themselves in a better light, we can change the world.
In the interest of time, Rosie, could you please make this your final question and please keep your answers on point? Thank you.
Of course. Now, I'm sure that we're all also aware that social media really plays such a big part in often how we view ourselves as well as other people. Now, what do you think the biggest cause for the damaging mental health is today?
So social media is something that's often blamed for this, and while it does correlate, the rise in the use of social media does correlate with the rise in mental health issues, it's also very much the fault of our family and friends' influence, not only on how we perceive appearance, but also on how we deal with our mental health. And so it's important that we take care to influence people positively.
Thank you.
Thank you. I invite you to sit down. Thank you, Rosie, for your wonderful questions and, of course, equally wonderful answers. It is now time for me to open up the floor to audience questions, and so fingers on your buzzers. But I'll give you a second to think. Yes, you please, thank you.
Hi, you touched on the whole idea of social media at the end there, and clearly the rise in eating disorders, body dysmorphia, is exacerbated by young people being exposed to social media. Would you go so far as to agree with a kind of smartphone ban for under 16s or social media companies taking more responsibility for negative content around body image?
Well, there are many different solutions to this problem that should probably be implemented together. And one of them is reducing how much young people use smartphones and social media, because then they're less exposed to this attitude that they should look perfect all the time. At the same time, even if we ban smartphones for under 16s, they will eventually be exposed to that world. And if we don't change our attitudes and how we present them to young people, we won't get anywhere. They'll still eventually develop these mental health issues.
Any other questions? Yes, you please.
I like how you talked about in a utopia-like world, we shouldn't really care about our looks or appearances. Do you think for people who are in the career, such as modelling, fashion, and etc., that we should now just completely remove jobs like that, making it precisely useless and unemploying these people, because it would still affect and mentally hurt these people, because we are consistently caring about how they look in order to let them keep their job in the first place?
And that's a really interesting point to make, because you would think that the fashion industry promotes this harmful attitude. But actually, true fashion, at its core, is about creativity. It's about trying new things, even if some people disapprove of them. And I think that that completely goes against this harmful attitude that you should always look a certain way. I mean, if you've ever seen a fashion runway, it's the complete opposite of what I'd consider acceptable. But it's bold, and it's daring, and it is imaginative. And I think that that should definitely continue, and it helps people.
Although I'm sure this conversation could go on a lot longer, it is now time for me to briefly summarise this round. Take a seat. And sure, I've got my work cut out for me, but Ant and Dec can move aside. As today we've heard Masa discuss the complexities of whether physical appearance should affect one's self-esteem. She brings up how this problem is a true challenge even going back to ancient Egyptian times. Masa questions why what you see in the mirror can make you feel worthless. She brings to light that pride and joy over a nice new haircut, I did notice by the way, Rosie, sorry, is not linked to your self-esteem, which is pointing out why appearance should be kept completely separate from self-esteem. I must commend Rosie for questioning whether people who don't worry about a classic beauty standard can actually cause themselves health problems such as obesity. However, Masa believes that this is a common idea only brought about by culture. And I would now like to thank the ESU for giving us this opportunity, and of course, Dartmouth House for hosting at such a beautiful venue. And I would like to thank Rosie and Masa for all of the information and knowledge they've brought to the table today. And I'm personally grateful for all of the lovely audience participation we have had. And so, to end in true game show host style, thank you and good night.